Hello, you glorious Godot people. Jan from Canopy Games here, and I wanted to share a little technique I've come up with for making comic book style explosions. If I fire up the prototype game I'm working on, there we go, and I move my character over here, drop the bomb, wait for it, and boom. Let's take a look at that in 2D mode. So that's the effect I want to work on. It's actually quite simple to make, and we only need a couple of assets for it. The first is this very, very simple bang image I've made. I just did this in GIMP with a few colors and a font. Obviously, you could make something a lot nicer, but from the distance we're going to be seeing it, this will actually work really well. In the game I'm working on, I'm actually using several of these, and I've just got different materials, and when the explosion is spawned, it just picks one at runtime. I've also got Light01 PNG, which is from Kenny's Particle Pack, which you should check out, and it's free and is wonderful because Kenny does great work. And with those, we can get started. Now, I want this to look the same from every angle, so that tells me I need to use some sort of billboard. There's a couple of things we could do. We could use a Sprite 3D. So let's bring in a Sprite 3D. And I could bring in my sprite. There's my sprite. Take a look at it, and so far it looks good, right? I can rotate it, I can do whatever I want. Fine, but we need to put it into particles mode. Now this is where the problems start. If I go into flags and I change it to enabled, okay, so far so good, right? This feels very much like Doom, the original. But if I try and rotate it, particle mode won't let me. And you might be thinking, well, what about Y particle? It's a good idea, but that just stops the up and down making a difference. Rotating along this axis actually makes no difference. So we can't use a Sprite 3D. We need to use a particle effect. That's okay, we can do that. Let's add a particle. And I only need one particle at a time, clearly. And let's give it a process material, so new particles material, and a new draw pass. I'm going to use a quad, and there they go. Before we do anything else, we need to mess with this quad a little bit. So first off, it's the wrong proportions. I want 2 on the X and 1 on the Y. And we need a material. So let's give it a spatial material and open that up. Some flags we need. We are using an alpha channel, so we need transparent. I do want unshaded, so let's click on that. I don't need to change the color in the particle material, so we can leave vertex color alone. Under parameters, I don't need to worry about the shading, but what I do need to worry about is billboard mode. And remember, you do not want Y billboard. I'll show you why. If we pick Y billboard, it seems to work, but it doesn't change on the up and down. That's no good to us. So instead, let's do particle billboard, and that way, if we've got a top-down camera like that, it'll work, and if we're down here, it'll work, and any other camera we want, works great. One more thing, under albedo, let's drag in the bang texture. Boop. Awesome, we now don't need our draw passes anymore. Everything else will be in the process material. Okay, let's turn off gravity. So under gravity, 0. And we now have, effectively, recreated a Sprite 3D. Okay, let's make this more interesting. I want this to feel like a 60s comic book movie, right? Like the old Batman TV show. So if we go to scale, we can put in a scale curve, and we can change this curve over time. So let's click on it. And we have a max value of 1 and a minimum of 0. So let's put a point here by right-clicking. Drag that down to, let's say, here. Yeah. And this all the way up to the top, which is 1. Okay, maybe a little bit faster. This is an explosion after all. That's about right. And we want it to fade out again. So right-click there. Okay, but this doesn't feel like an explosion, does it? What it feels like is, well, something zooming in and out. So let's give it a bit of a bounce. Let's give it a bit more energy. Right at the top here, let's add another point and just drag that in. And now I'm going to change my max value to 1.5. And in between these 2 points, I'm going to right-click here and drag that up. And let's actually give that a bit more momentum. There we go. Look at that. In fact, we could probably remove this point entirely, couldn't we? And if you want, you can give it a Bezier curve. There we go. Look at that bounce. That feels really nice. And let's give that a bit of a bounce too. So we now have this really bouncy, vibrant image, but I wanted to make it rotate as well. Now, if we look under angle, we can change the angle of the particle. Fine. So I could give it a 720, but it doesn't seem to move. And the reason for that is this is static. I need to change this over time, which means we want the angle curve. So let's go to new curve texture. Click on that. And here we go. Minimum value is going to be 0. Maximum value, let's say 720. Let's go crazy here. So let's add a new point, and right near the beginning, we're going to zoom in, and quite near the end, I'm going to bring that to 720 as well, because I want this stable. There we go, look at that. I can drag that 720 out a bit more. I mean, that feels pretty good, right? Don't forget, this will be a one-shot, so if I go to time and make this a one-shot, and fire it off. Not bad, right? Now, I also want an actual explosion underneath, just for the look of the thing. So let's do that. I'm going to turn off one shot for now, leave that particle alone, but I do want this higher than the actual explosion. So I'm going to go to translation, and let's move it up by a meter. Now let's put in let's rename this actually. Let's rename this to boom particle. And let's put in a new particles and call this sparks particles. Okay, once again, we want a process material. And we want a draw pass. Let's use quads again. And I want this a little bit smaller. Let's call this 0.5 by 0.5. And it needs a new material, so a new spatial material. Click on that. And let's go through what we need. So under flags, we want transparent and we want unshaded. Under vertex color, we want user's albedo. Reason for that is I want to control the color in the particles material. So that's going to allow me to do that. Under parameters, let's put on particles billboard, not Y billboard. Almost did it again. I do that time. I don't like it. And under albedo, let's give it the light 1 PNG. Okay. Doesn't look like an explosion, but we can fix that. Oh, one more thing we do want to do actually before we come out of here. Let's go back to shading. And instead of blend mode mix, let's add it. So the more there are on top of each other, the brighter it'll get. That's going to come in really handy in a bit. Meanwhile, we can close our draw passes and open our particles materials. Let's turn off gravity, so gravity 0. And let's start playing with this. So let's go to the emission shape first and go to, instead of a point, let's emit them over a sphere. That's way too big a sphere, so let's say 0.2. Okay, so they're going to all come in over a 20 centimeter area, so that's great, or volume, not area. And now let's give it some movement. So let's say direction, it's going to be an X, it doesn't really matter if it's on the X or the Y or the Z, but I want a direction, a spread of 360 degrees. Let's give it an initial velocity, let's say 2. Okay, that's a bit much, isn't it? We could probably dampen that a little bit, so let's dampen that by 2. Okay. Getting there, getting there. Let's also play with the scale. So let's go to scale and give it a curve texture so we can change it over time. Click that, edit the curve, and put a point here and just make a nice little zoom in and out. Okay, coming along. One thing I do notice, we don't have anywhere near enough of these. So let's change from 8 to 64. Okay, they're looking like bubbles, but we can fix that. Go to time, and let's put the explosiveness to 1. Now we're getting there. However, these colors are not going to work for me. So let's go down to our color area. And remember, we do want to be under process material. And as long as we've set use albedo color in the material, we can put a color wrap here as well. So let's go in here. Don't worry if it's vanished. It's just because the gradient is empty. New gradient. Click on that. And let's start with a nice deep red, so about here, I think. From here, we'll go into a much brighter red. From here into a sort of orangey yellow color. And from here, we can go and turn the alpha all the way down. In fact, let's move you over here. Let's put this yellow much brighter. Maybe a bit more orange than that. And I'm going to drag this one over here and change this to transparent. Okay, that is starting to feel a bit better. Colors aren't quite there yet, are they? So let's make this a bit more vibrant. And I think this should actually be a bit more yellowy. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, one thing I do want to do is make this feel a little bit more organic. So under randomness, let's put that at 0.25. And that's just going to stop them all fading at exactly the same time. Okay, let's make that a one shot. And let's see how this looks. So I'm going to add a camera. And move the camera. So let's just move you to, I don't know, here. Make that current. And let's give this a script. So let's give explosion and explosion.gd. Don't need any of this. All I need is a simple input function. So input event. And from here, we can just go if the event.isActionPressed. Let's use UI accept, the spacebar, and we'll set off both particles at once. So boom particle dot emitting equals true, and sparks particles dot emitting equals true. Okay, let's see how that goes. I didn't make that boom particle a one shot, did I? So let's go do that one more time with feeling. All right, not bad. Now, I do want to move my sparks particles a little bit back. Fix that. Let's just take our sparks particle and go make sure we're in move mode and just move you very slightly along the X. So one more time to camera. And let's see how that looks like from the top. So let's move the camera to, let's say, 0 on the Z and 4 on the Y. And we're going to rotate you like so. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. And that's all from me. If you want to check out our free and paid-for tutorials, do come on over to canopy.games. Meanwhile, excellent work, and I'll see you soon.